Hi there, it's time for Chapter 3 in Book 3 of the Titanic. RMS Carpathia, Monday, April 15th, 1912, 12:25 a.m. It was him again. Marconi operator Harold Cottam looked up at the doorway of the wireless shack, and there he was. Young, eager, hard to get rid of, even after midnight. Especially after midnight, when things were quiet, and Cottam couldn't really complain that he was too busy. Drazen Kurkovic, age 14, the son of a Croatian diplomat, stepped into the small office, gazing worshipfully up at Cottam. I thought perhaps this might be a convenient moment. A bit late, isn't it? Cottam said hopefully. Drazen looked so disappointed that the wireless operator had to relent. On the first day of their Carpathia's voyage, the boy had turned up at the Marconi room and declared, "Of all the sailors on this ship, it is you I admire most." And he must have meant it because his adulation since that day had become downright embarrassing. Drazen was so enthralled with the new technology that he worshipped anyone associated with it. Never mind that the salary of a Marconi operator was less than £5 per voyage. The diplomat's son was determined to learn every detail of wireless communication. So let's stop and summarize, make sure that we check for understanding. So this is not the Titanic. It's a different ship that's close by, the Carpathia. And a boy from the ship, like a political official from another country, he's interested in the Marconi operator. That's where they do the Morse code to send the telegrams. Cottam sighed. "Very well, lad. You can take over the set for a few minutes, but you're not likely to hear me in the wee hours of a Monday morning." Overjoyed, Drazen donned the headset and took Cottam's place at the desk. The expression on his face was pure bliss, despite the fact that all he could hear was white noise and the occasional crackle of static. Cottam put on water for tea and began to glance through a days-old New York newspaper. A gasp from Drazen recaptured his attention. The boy was standing, white as a sheet. I think you should hear this, Mr. Cottam." Now, Cottam lectured. "When you wear that headset, you and only you are responsible for the messages that come in on your watch." "In that case," Drazen replied, "wake the captain." I predicted that he probably heard the SOS call from the Titanic. "You're barmy," Cottam explained with a short laugh. "Why would I ever do that?" "It's a CQD," Drazen said tensely, struggling to translate the Morse code Cottam had taught him. "Struck an iceberg and sinking by the head. The call letters are MGY." "MGY?" repeated Cottam. "Why, that's—" He rushed over to a small ledger and began leafing through the pages. "Good God, it's the Titanic." Water trickled down the metal work stairs as Patty pounded from D deck to E. So now we changed scenes. Now we're back on the Titanic. About halfway along, his hobnail boots slipped out from under him on the slick steps, and he made a short, painful descent, bouncing on his bottom. He landed with a splash into frigid water, but jumped right up and began to slosh his way aft along the broad passageway known as Scotland Road. It seemed a very long way before his feet came down on dry deck. He was puffing, too, as if slogging uphill, which, in a way, he was. As the Titanic's nose dipped lower, the simple act of moving aft became a climb. Scotland Road, normally a busy place, was deserted. At this point in the crisis, all crew members were at their stations. The picture was very different, however, at the base of the third-class staircase. That was a mob scene. All of steerage had assembled, and an agitated clamor in a dozen different languages echoed off the unadorned bulkheads. The stewards were putting people into lifebelts, but many of the emigrants who didn't understand English were resisting help. The physical struggle of it rippled through the tight crowd like a shoving match. "Mrs. Rankin!" Patty began to work his way through the chaotic assemblage, searching for the family that had helped him hide from the White Star Line. A hand reached out from the throng and spun him around as he passed. A moment later, he was in Mrs. Rankin's arms. "Patty, I took an extra life belt. I knew you'd come back." "What's going on down here?" Patty asked her. "Why aren't they moving you up to the boat deck with the other passengers?" "They took a small group of women up a few minutes ago, but that's all," she replied. "Why, Patty? What do you know? What's going on?" Patty was distraught. "They're swimming out lifeboats, they are. I'll bet the loading has already started. How can they leave people down here?" Why do you bother yourself to ask that question?" she cried in despair. "We're foreigners. The English don't care a whit about us." "That they don't," exploded Curran. at 17, the eldest of the 4 Rankin boys. Why are we being held here? Why can't we go to the boat deck? It's for your own safety, called Mr. Steptoe, senior most of the 3rd class stewards. How does it save us to be below decks on a sinking ship? Someone shouted. Oh, so you know better than the captain himself, Steptoe snapped. For one thing, getting to the boat deck isn't as simple as you might make it out to be. Do you think these stairs lead straight up to first class? Well, they don't. If I turn you loose, you'll get lost. And then where will you be? Patty spoke up. I know how to get to the boat deck. Steptoe stared at him in sudden recognition. You're the stowaway. What are you going to do then? Patty scoffed. Put me in the brig? It's underwater, don't you know? He turned to the crowd. Which is where you'll all be if you don't get out of here. Now who's with me? A nervous indecision rippled through the crowd. Why should anyone take the word of a single bedraggled Irish boy, soaked to the skin? Mrs. Rankin broke the silence. Me and mine are going with you, Patty. She faced the throng. I'll not be telling you what to do, but you might want to think about how the English have been treating us since the dawn of history. The Rankin boys followed their mother and Patty to the 3rd class staircase. A few others joined them timidly, wilting under their steward's disapproval. Steptoe hurried over to the bar their way. I'll not allow it. The 2 elder Rankin boys lifted him, each at an elbow, and set him down again amid the throng. Several other stewards started forward, but the hostile crowd moved to cut them off from the steps. There's a natural order to how these things are done, Steptoe raged. Why are you supporting these line jumpers? It's your places they're taking and creating chaos in a time when we need discipline. When it's our turn, we will be called. Patty paused at the first landing, shepherding his group up the stairs. Perhaps 30 people, including the Rankins, were with him. The others, hundreds of them, milled about on E-deck, looking worried, uneasy. In spite of the many lessons their hard lives had surely taught them, they were choosing to be sheep, to obey the instructions of men in fancy uniforms over what their common sense must have been telling them. Which way, Patty? Called Aidan Rankin from above. Patty raced to take the lead, and the group surged up the staircase, spilling out onto the aft well deck. All eyes were immediately drawn to the boat deck 3 levels above. There swung the lifeboats, ringing the superstructure like the beads of a rosary. Even from that distance, they could make out the first-class ladies wrapped in heavy cloaks under the bitter cold, being loaded aboard. Are we truly sinking? Shrilled a young woman, hugging her baby. Believe it, Patty said grimly. Do you think the crew would inconvenience those rich swells for anything less? Mrs. Rankin looked around in alarm. Isn't that just like the English? They built their death trap, and we're the ones who have to suffer for it. Curran nodded fervently. Ma's right. Those lifeboats might as well be in God's own heaven for all we can get to them from here. Follow me, ordered Patty. He guided the group out of the well deck via a steep companion stair. There, behind a tall, horn-shaped ventilator, a crew ladder led straight up the Titanic's superstructure. One by one, they made the climb. The woman handed her baby to Aidan as Patty and Curran helped her over the rail. They were on A deck now, just 1 level below the dangling lifeboats. The sounds of chaos on the boat deck were audible now, the anxious babble of passengers punctuated by urgent, shouted instructions from the crew. I'll not allow you to put me on that thing so I can catch my death of cold, declared one woman's authoritative voice above them. A chorus of agreement rang out. Will you listen to that? Said Mrs. Rankin in a subdued tone. Not all of us bleat like sheep, taking orders from anyone in a monkey suit. Patty nodded wisely. Those first-class toffs stand up for themselves, they do. Even if it's for the privilege of drowning.